Guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Saturday, September 7th, 2024, and today we are going to be talking about a list of Republicans who over the past couple of weeks, and arguably even the past couple of months, that have come out against former President Donald Trump, now recently including Vice President Dick Cheney, the Vice President under the George W. Bush administration, announcing yesterday that he will in fact be voting for Vice President Harris, saying that Donald Trump can, quote, never be trusted with power again. Now, this endorsement coming from Vice President Dick Cheney really goes to show that the Kamala Harris campaign has really expanded their tent very far out beyond what many people could have expected at the immediate announcement of her campaign. The endorsement from Dick Cheney, alongside the endorsement of his daughter Liz Cheney, alongside many other prominent Republicans who have since either left the party or maintained their party affiliation, but have yet to come out in total endorsement of Donald Trump, and in many cases have come out in endorsement of Kamala Harris, adds up into this general building of a Republicans against Trump movement, one that seems to be even larger than it was back in 2016. Now, during the 2016 election, I remember there was a lot of consideration around Republicans who, in general, were just against Donald Trump. None of them had really come out in full-fledged support of Hillary Clinton, and some of those Republicans even included people like J.D. Vance, Donald Trump's running mate today, who said that he might even hold his nose and vote for Hillary Clinton in 2016. He was in the state of Ohio. He had been well known for the book he had written, and beyond that too, J.D. Vance, at that point in time, was very much anti-Trump. Now, in 2016, there was far more anti-Trump sentiment that came from the Republican Party, but when push came to shove, they voted for Donald Trump in the election. We found that 2020, we only saw marginal improvement for Donald Trump amongst the Republican Party base, and that's because in 2016, 90% of the Republican Party voted for Donald Trump. This time around, things feel very different in the sense that Kamala Harris has started to branch out those who are willing to publicly endorse her rather than just Republicans who are willing to publicly come out against Donald Trump. And even some Republicans, people like Liz Cheney and Dick Cheney, who in 2020 were adamant supporters of Donald Trump, very, very big proponents of him. You can even see Liz Cheney leading into the 2020 election had been very, very clear. She was in favor of Donald Trump. She was supporting Donald Trump. She had written ads and recorded ads and done speeches and stumps, all these things for the former president, because before the 2020 election had concluded, all of these Republicans, nearly without a doubt, people like Mike Pence, the vice president at the time, people like Dick Cheney, people like Liz Cheney, were very clear. Donald Trump was the person for them. But then came January 6th, and then came the aftermath of the 2020 election in which many Republicans started to turn away from the former president. We saw all these considerations around Governor Ron DeSantis and Ambassador Nikki Haley and all of these people that were supposed to replace Donald Trump, and some prominent Republicans began backing these alternatives, stating that Donald Trump should never be president ever again after January 6th, and that the American public wouldn't even vote for him. But then he became the nominee. And Republicans fell back into line. They came back into the point where they were endorsing Donald Trump. No more criticisms of Donald Trump. But for some of these Republicans, it hit a breaking point where they simply could not stand by and allow Donald Trump to be elected yet again in the 2024 election. And so rather than come out against Donald Trump and not endorse a Democratic candidate, for instance, we saw that from Mitt Romney in 2020, senator from Utah, former governor of Massachusetts, 2012, Republican nominee for president, still in this election has not endorsed Donald Trump, came out publicly in 2020 and argued against Donald Trump as a candidate, but not for Joe Biden. He said he was not going to vote for President Biden at the time. Vice President Biden was not going to vote for a Democrat down ballot because Donald Trump was at the top of the ticket. And we also saw this too. People like Larry Hogan, that was my governor in 2020, who publicly said he was writing in Ronald Reagan. Now, we typically know in a presidential election, it's a two-party system. Writing your vote or writing in a vote or voting third party doesn't contribute to the eventual winner of the election, but what it does do is sends a message to some extent. But Mitt Romney writing in someone, Larry Hogan writing in someone, wasn't taking a stance that many Democrats were hoping for, and that was to vote for Joe Biden. This time, again, things seem to change. And the fact is, too, we are still seeing this silence from prominent Republicans that used to be major party leaders in the GOP. People like George W. Bush, whose office today said that President Bush has retired from presidential politics years ago. It is customary that the president of the party endorses their party's nominee until the day they die. That's how these things work when it comes down to American politics. Because to be quite frank, all of the living presidents have lived in the modern era of the current Democratic and Republican parties. And so to see such a massive party shift, we haven't had a major realignment for any of the presidents who are still alive today. We haven't had a major shift in the sense that we've seen liberal ideology now become Republican and conservative ideology now become Democrat, or vice versa. We have pretty much been staying with the same political parties since the civil rights era, left versus right, since the 1960s. And so George W. Bush's silence on the 2024 election speaks volumes in the same way it did in 2016 and in 2020. But more Republicans were not willing to come out in favor of Kamala Harris, or were not willing to come out against Donald Trump in the aftermath of the 2016 election, because they knew at that moment that not only had the Republican Party changed, but the country at large. We also have to look at this too, where it isn't just Dick Cheney, it isn't just Liz Cheney, it isn't just George W. Bush, it is Donald Trump's own vice president back in 2020. Mike Pence, we all remember him, Trump-Pence 2016, Trump-Pence 2020. He announces back in March that he will not be endorsing Donald Trump for president, and has not walked that back. We saw many Republicans say in the primary season, I will not kiss the ring. I will not fall down and endorse Donald Trump. I will not end up in his tent. Ron DeSantis insinuated, Nikki Haley plainly stated it. Many Republicans promised that when they were running against Donald Trump, it's because they saw him as a threat and that they couldn't reach the White House. And the moment that he won the Republican nomination, they fell in line. They spoke at the RNC. They spoke in advertisements. They recorded clips for the president, former President Trump. They did all of these things to boost Donald Trump's reelection because it was a politically advantageous thing to do for them at the time. But for Mike Pence, he refuses to fall in line. George W. Bush, he refuses to fall in line. Liz Cheney, she refuses to fall in line. And then just 2 days later, a day later rather, Vice President Dick Cheney says he will not vote for Donald Trump, but instead vote for Kamala Harris. I mean, the fact is, these are people that have been serving in elected office in the 21st century. Dick Cheney was in office from 2001 to 2009. I was born during the George W. Bush administration, and while I certainly was not an active participant in American politics, anybody who was can tell you just how monumental of an endorsement this is. Is it going to save the election for Kamala Harris or sway the election tremendously in favor of Kamala Harris? The answer is no. But it speaks to a more consistent thread that we have seen since July 21st, when Kamala Harris entered into the race, and there was an alternative for voters that was not 80 years old, that was not someone who had been associated with the Biden part of the Biden-Harris administration as much. And so Kamala Harris came in, provided not only Democrats with this newfound hope and ideas and idealism, rather, for the party, that it would be someone who's younger. It would be someone who is a woman, right? A woman of color at the top of the ticket. You have so many things that Democrats have been longing for decades at the top of the ticket. Come in just around a month and a half ago, Dick Cheney not only provided with that opportunity that Democrats now feel exhilarated, but it provides Republicans somebody else besides Joe Biden. Because in 2020 and many other years before, they were bashing the former vice president, then turned president until he won. In 2021, in 2022, and 2023, a lot of their rhetoric was around how they believe Biden did bad things for the nation, but now it's turning around into how they think Donald Trump would be even worse. And in response and in recognition of the two-party system that we exist in, not throwing away your vote is the way that they're phrasing this and the way they're viewing it. You can see a lot of Republicans out there saying it is not just about not voting for Trump. It is about voting for Kamala Harris, even if you disagree with her on policy, because she stands with us and she stands with America. That is the way the Republicans have been positioning it. You watched it at the DNC, you watched it, and even in these statements, they say that this is the most patriotic thing you can do, is put country over party. And that's what Dick Cheney is doing in this statement. That's what Liz Cheney is doing. That's what George W. Bush is doing. That's what Mike Pence is doing. And while sure, George W. Bush, Mike Pence are not coming out with full-fledged statements of support for Kamala Harris, it is an unspoken thing that all of these formerly elected Republicans, even Donald Trump's own vice president, I mean, I cannot believe we are even at this point. This is such a fever dream in American politics. But he is not even endorsing his own president that he ran alongside, that he served alongside, because Donald Trump made Mike Pence's life a living hell over January 6th, over the certification of electoral votes nationwide. He made his life a living hell and continues to do so. Donald Trump bashes Mike Pence. Donald Trump attacks Mike Pence. This is the guy who was supposed to be his right-hand man and was his right-hand man through everything, through the Access Hollywood tape leak, through in multiple debates where he lost to Hillary Clinton through an administration where his approval rating was record low. You saw Mike Pence. At not one sign did he decide to depart from the Trump train until his own life was seemingly at risk. Not even seemingly, was at risk. We saw people bring a noose to January 6th. We heard the chants, hang Mike Pence. And so when Donald Trump comes out and says that January 6th was a completely peaceful protest, where 100 million Americans tuned into the news and watched what happened, well, it doesn't fly for many of these Republicans, and it certainly doesn't fly for these very prominent elected officials. And so again, to reiterate that point I made earlier on, I don't think that this is something that makes Kamala Harris a significantly more electable candidate. I think if she was going to win, she was going to win anyway. If she was going to lose, she was going to lose anyway. But it builds into this narrative that Democrats have been building since 2016. And that is, there is a place in Democratic politics for Republicans against Trump, because their time to organize against Kamala Harris would be a far better time to reorganize and restructure the Republican Party than doing it under Donald Trump, who would perpetuate the same things, the MAGA brand, this America First brand that Donald Trump has adopted, this Save America brand, all of these different things that Donald Trump has formed into the modern day GOP. Because if he loses, they do believe that it is this election that will send MAGA to the grave, that will send MAGA out of Republican politics in the same way that Donald Trump pushed out the Tea Party, in the same way the Tea Party pushed out all of those McCain Republicans before them. In the same way we have seen it when parties practically overhaul their core base and who represents them on the national level for now and since 2015, the Republican Party has been the party not of conservative principle, not of traditional family values, not of anything they stood for under the Bush, Dole, Bush, Reagan timeframe. Rather, this has all been about one person, and that is Donald Trump. And so since 2015 until now, and should Donald Trump win this election through 2029 at least, if J.D. Vance doesn't win an additional term, making it 2033, right? Then 2037, so many different ways the Republican Party could be seeing a massive continuation of Donald Trump's brand, Donald Trump's legacy, and Donald Trump's, quite frankly, losing ideology that we have seen consistently underperform everybody that runs in Republican politics and has ran in the past. And that's why you're seeing these Republicans come out against Donald Trump. And so I think it's a major thing for any former vice president, Mike Pence, I already made a video on, but now Dick Cheney too, joining the ranks of Democratic politics. When you had Representative Republican Adam Kinzinger speaking at the Democratic National Convention. When you have Republicans coming out in support of Kamala Harris. There are so many people that you can pull in so many different directions who you really just see that are getting full-fledged out there to endorse Kamala Harris, especially in the states that matter. Liz Cheney is going to Texas to campaign for Kamala Harris, North Carolina, right? You also take a look, too. Who else is endorsing Kamala Harris? John McCain, his son, endorsed Kamala Harris and switched his party registration for the first time in his life from Republican to Democrat, and it is endorsing Kamala Harris for president. So many different people are jumping on this train of abandoning Trump in favor of Kamala Harris because they see it now. When it was Biden, they didn't think he could win. And so they didn't want to put their political experiences and lives on the line by endorsing Joe Biden. Because if he lost the election, which it looked like he was going to do, if he lost the election, it would have been all for nothing. All this outspokenness for nothing. But now, because they see an opportunity and they're really honing in on Donald Trump, where Kamala Harris is doing far better than that of Joe Biden, you can see on the national level, really a much, much, much better position than where Biden was on the day he dropped out, especially when it came down to the battleground states. If we go ahead and take a look at the Trump versus Biden polls, I guess redirecting to the wrong thing here, something about this website doesn't seem to be right, but you will find that on the day Biden decided to drop out of the race, Donald Trump led him by nearly 4 points nationwide. That is a massive advantage for Donald Trump. And so in the battleground states, Trump was leading every swing state, every district, every single region of the country that mattered. Donald Trump was beating Biden. And so there was no urgency on the Republican side to get out there and endorse someone who they believed was going to lose. But now with Kamala Harris, while she may not necessarily be the favorite to everyone, the betting markets have now swung back in favor of Trump very narrowly. she has a much better chance than when it was under Biden. Because again, that day that Biden decided to drop out of the race, his odds at victory, July 21st, for Joe Biden was 9.5%. Combined Democratic share here and chance at victory, less than 40%. Today, it stands at a low point recently of just 48%, which is a really, really massive improvement and a lot of room for growth for Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party at large. And so now with Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney, and potentially George W. Bush sometime soon, and potentially Mike Pence, but even then, complete and total rejections of Donald Trump as a person from these Republicans is a telling sign about the future of this election with less than 2 months to go, and that many Republicans from here till November may come out against Donald Trump because of January 6th, because of election denialism, because of extremism, where they believe that while they do not agree with Kamala Harris on policy, that she fundamentally is better for the nation. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the top left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2024 presidential election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.